Another episode of Sloppy Saturdays, and today we are going over Ohio State, Michigan. Everybody heard the quote, Jeremiah Smith saying he's not losing to Michigan in the next 2 years. We're going to talk about how Ohio State lost last year, the team they were going into the national championship, and we're going to talk about if Jeremiah Smith's claim is actually possible, if we think he could do it, if it was the right move for him to talk like that. Let's get right into it. Now, there has been a lot of talk. We have done previous episodes on a lot of players' quotes. We have done quotes on Thomas Castellanos. We have done quotes on Diego Pavia. But unlike all those quotes where I thought these players were delusional and should not be painting a target on his back, I am fine with Jeremiah Smith's quote saying he's not going to lose to Michigan in the next 2 years. Because, again, we are talking about arguably the best player in the sport. And we are talking about a team leader saying we are not going to lose to this rival. Now, the first thing I want to say about this Ohio State-Michigan rivalry is the notion from Ohio State fans of devaluing this rivalry. I understand that if the Ohio State fans want to say, hey, I don't care that we lost to Michigan, we won a national championship. Again, national championship is the number one goal as a program going into every year. But listen, these Ohio State fans care. These Michigan fans care. When you talk about a rivalry like this, one of the best rivalries in all of sports, when you talk about a national championship, if this is the goal, national championship, Ohio State, Michigan for those fans are like right here. This rivalry means so much. And last year was an absolute embarrassment. It was an absolute embarrassment. Now, when we talk about these rivalry games, when we talk about Auburn, Alabama, and Michigan, Ohio State, all these type of rivalries, no matter what state each team is in, these teams get up for this game. Like this Ohio State Michigan game last year, I believe the spread was like 19 and a half, 20 and a half. It was a huge spread. I thought it was the lock of the year. I posted on this channel it was the lock of the year for Michigan to take plus 20. Like in a rivalry game, it's so different. Like you could look at teams in previous weeks, which we tell you guys not to do, coming off a certain week, a certain matchup, but these teams in these rivalry games get up for the games. I don't care who's on the field for Ohio State, who's on the field for Michigan. The underdog is getting up. And especially with wide knowledge of betting, like the teams going in, they know the spread. Now, when we talk about Ohio State, Michigan, especially last year, why I say it's such an embarrassment, because I don't think I've ever seen in my lifetime. Again, I would have to go back, look at literally every score and every roster and remember everything. But I don't think I've ever seen a wider gap between Ohio State and Michigan than last year. Like we said, you're talking about a spread that opened up at 20 points. When you look at Michigan last year, they were a team just turnover from the national championship. We look at their offense, it was basically all gone from last year. When we look at J.J. McCarthy, Roman Wilson, Blake Corum, like their whole offense was basically gone. The defense remained pretty much intact. Like the defense was still really good last year for this Michigan team. But again, they didn't have a quarterback that could throw it vertically. They didn't have a quarterback that could throw forward passes, it seemed like. Again, they switched back and forth between Alex Orji, Davis Warren. Thought Davis Warren was a little bit of a better option. Again, because with Alex Orji, it literally looked like a middle school, early high school run offense where you just have an athlete at the quarterback position trying to make plays but has no ability to throw the ball at the quarterback position. And you look at this win for Michigan, 13-10, it was an absolute embarrassment for this Ohio State team, especially looking at how they finished the year, winning a national championship, and their talent on offense. Like, again, even though Will Howard, in my opinion, wasn't the best quarterback in the country last year, wide gap from Alex Orji and anybody else in this Michigan room. And then when you look at their receivers, again, you're talking about three of the top receivers in the country, two of the top running backs in the country. When you look at the total amount of talent between this Ohio State and Michigan team, again, if this wasn't a rivalry game, you're talking about a huge gap. You're really talking about a 20-point gap in between the two teams, especially if you talk about how they finished the year. Now, again, we saw this Michigan team play other teams tough as well. They beat Alabama in that bowl game as well. I know bowl games, people start, people don't start. That's a huge thing. But again, this Michigan team played people tough. Their defensive scheme was really good, and their defense was good the whole entire year. And that's what stopped Ohio State in this game. Now, I think the biggest thing for Ohio State when you look at the Michigan game and you also look at the Oregon game as well, this team, again, most talented team in the country without a doubt. But when you look at them cohesively, they weren't really there on both of those games. When you look at the Oregon Ohio State game, the defense really lost in that game. The defense didn't look put together. It looked like Oregon could pretty much score every single time down. Again, Oregon probably the second best team last year when you look at talent wise. Again, that offense was absolutely loaded as well. And that's a kind of early in the year game. But then when you look at Michigan, it looked like the offense was an adapt as well. And I think the biggest thing for this Ohio State Michigan game, again, I'm not trying to make any excuses for Ohio State. They should have definitely won this game. They had more talent than Michigan. Is they really weren't pushing the ball to number 4. And when you look at Jeremiah Smith, again, also in this interview where he says he's not losing to Michigan, he also said how tough it was for him to get the playbook down. He said that they were basically throwing everything at him from the gate. I mean, we look at Jeremiah Smith, a guy that was a starter day one for this Ohio State team, and he had great stats throughout the year, but we really looked like in that Tennessee game, they pushed the ball to 4. In the Texas game, they were trying to push the ball to number 4 as well. Cardinal Tate had a big game. Like, we saw the difference from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, how much they were pushing the ball to him. And then obviously the Notre Dame game in the national championship, he's just calling for the ball in the last play. So I think that was the biggest thing for this Ohio State team. When you look at their early losses, them cohesively as units, they weren't as put together as they were to the end of the year. And then obviously when you look at the offense, like we said, Jeremiah Smith said his trouble was learning the playbook throughout the early stages of the year. So again, your number one option, arguably the best player in the country, you not be able to push it to him like you were towards the end of the year at that time. Again, big reason why they lost. Again, should they have gotten him more involved still in the Michigan game? Yes, 100%. Was the play calling pretty rough? Yes, 100% as well. But then when you look at Will Howard at that stage as well, we saw Will Howard play his best games in this college football playoff run. He was at the height of his play towards the end of the year. Now, he wasn't like that in the middle of the year. I said it to you guys in the middle of the year as well. You're not noticing it in some of these games. He's missing fundamental plays because Ohio State is blowing some of these teams out. It's not being really put on a high scale like that. But we saw in that Michigan game him missing routine throws as well. So when we look at Ohio State, they were a team that got a lot better throughout the whole entire year. And like I said, the biggest thing for me was the gap between Ohio State and Michigan. Like, there was no possible way Ohio State should have lost this game. Again, even if you talk about them getting better throughout the year, obviously as they won a national championship, there was just no way talent-wise. This was supposed to be the easiest Ohio State win against Michigan we have ever seen, and it just didn't go that way. Now, when you look at the previous records from Ohio State, Michigan, like last year, we said Michigan won 13-10. Then in Ann Arbor, the year before that, 30-24, Michigan won. Then in Columbus, 45-23, Michigan won. Then in Ann Arbor, 42-27, Michigan won. And then in 2019, that's the last time Ohio State won. So we're going on 2025 now from 2019. We're talking about 6 years now going on where Ohio State hasn't won. And now getting into the thick of things in this episode, why I believe Jeremiah Smith made this claim and why I think it was the right claim. Like I said, he's a guy that could paint a target on his back. He's the best player in the country, and I expect him to absolutely explode the next 2 years against Michigan. Again, he's in a way different setup than he was as a freshman against Michigan. Like I said, a guy that was still learning the playbook, a guy that the offense wasn't completely ran through like it was at the end of the year. And it's going to be run through Jeremiah Smith this next year against Michigan. But the biggest thing as well, why I believe he can make this claim, is because I think Ohio State is going to have the nod over Michigan significantly the next 2 years. When we talk about last year, again, there's never going to be a wider gap than last year. But when we look at Ohio State, how much talent they were still able to return going into the NFL draft. I mean, they had a ton of players going to the NFL draft, but Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Smith, Egan Boosin, Cardinal Tate, like there's a ton of talent in this Ohio State team, and they're going to be national championship contenders the next 2 years. Michigan is not going to be a national championship contender this year. and we see what happens going into the next year as well. But I still believe there's going to be a gap between these two teams. But now I believe that this offense is going to be really run, pushing the ball to number four, different than his freshman year at that time. And I think this claim is completely valid, being the best player in the country, and this gap between Ohio State and Michigan. I think it is extremely possible. Not only extremely possible, I think it should happen where Ohio State beats Michigan in the next 2 years. Again, it's going to be very interesting to see how Bryce Underwood develops, if he's going to come out right away hot as a freshman, because we've seen guys like DJ Lagway, Dylan Raiola last year, where there's a ton of hype with those guys, and then again, not really them meeting expectations in their first year. Because as a true freshman going into a program that has high expectations, it is super difficult. So again, I think as a true freshman against Ohio State, I think Ohio State's going to have a wide enough gap to beat them this year, even though Julian Sain is a first-time starter as well. Also in this interview, Jeremiah Smith said a ton of great things about him, how he can make every throw in the field, how he's a quiet leader like him as well. And again, Julian Sain a little different than Bryce Underwood, a guy that at least been in the program for a year. Believe me, that's a significant difference. So I expect there to be a wide gap between Ohio State and Michigan this year, and I expect Ohio State definitely to take care of it this year. And then again, who knows what it's going to be this time in 2026, but I still expect Ohio State to have the upper hand. And again, they're going to be force feeding Jeremiah Smith throughout the next 2 years. I absolutely love this claim. I can't wait for Ohio State Michigan this year to see Jeremiah Smith back it up. That wraps up this episode of Sloppy Saturdays, and